last.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Fluffenbusters. My designated name is 88M.
Only human.
I hope you're okay.
Dodge this.
In late 1994, Keanu Reeves was so sick and tired of Hollywood that he took a break to go on tour with his band. He'd just finished working on a cyberpunk film, Johnny Mnemonic, that had been wrecked by studio interference.
I want room service!
But Hollywood works in strange ways, and while he despaired over the resulting movie, two aspiring writer-directors were already planning their own cyberpunk film, using Johnny in their movie pitches, stating what they would do and what mistakes they would avoid.
Welcome to the real world.
They blended martial arts, Hong Kong action cinema, and countless other media sources into a mix with philosophy, religion, and more personal issues, leading to a script that some actors stated was just too deep for its own good. The project reached Keanu, who happily jumped on board, and with some clever playing of the Hollywood game by the directors, the result was a film shoot almost free of studio interference, and was marketed to the general public so effectively that even Quentin Tarantino turned up on the opening weekend, dying to see just what the hell this movie was all about. The result was a huge success that somehow stole the award shine from the return of Star Wars that year and presented an idea so memorably that it led to countless movie knockoffs, memes, and phrases that are still used by the general public over 25 years later. And while its long list of influences and nods captured an almost ravenous set of fans, it also alienated others who saw the whole idea as a little bit pretentious and overworked. The choice is yours. The film is 1999's The Matrix, and joining me, fresh from jumping between buildings, is Grand Agent D. How are you doing, sir?
I'm kind of wishing I had access to their funky needles to make my body better than it is, or just be able to plug in to download all the skills. Frankly,
I know kung fu.
Show me.
but no, I'm looking forward to this because The Matrix it's a film that I classify as one of those rarities where you can very clearly delineate cinema before The Matrix and after. And nowadays, it's real hard for folks who weren't around to grasp just how important The Matrix was at the time and how groundbreaking. For all it can be a bit pretentious, but yeah, I'm looking forward to this.
Should we just jump in?
I think we should, yeah.
I think a lot of the discussion as well is going to be about the impact the film's had and what it's done and just how much of a shock it was at the time. But it's probably easier to say that when we've got the stuff on the screen. So
Absolutely.
now we're going to start from the start of the Warner Brothers logo because they've matrixified it. So that will contain a couple of different studio logos at the start. Are you ready, Mr. D?
I am.
Right. And we shall go in 3, 2, 1, go.
Excellent.
Now, I'd like to find out from you, when did you first hear about this film? And before you saw it, what did you think it was about?
I wasn't sure because I'd seen, I think, a couple of trailers, and at the time the trailers were they kept everything really close to the bone. They didn't give a lot away. It looked very stylish. I mean, I'd seen Bound prior to this.
Yes.
Because I'd been getting really into film at the time. I was buying Total Film and Empire quite regularly, as well as SFX. And Wachowski's made a real impact with Bound.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be understated just how much juice that gave them to get this film off the ground.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Because if anyone hasn't listened to it, hasn't seen Bound, go and watch it. It's a remarkable piece of noir filmmaking. Very, and especially coming out in the 90s, such an underrated flick for a lot of folks. But it gave them the juice to leapfrog onto this.
Yeah.
With the assist, I think, of Joel Silver produced.
Yes, that's it.
But Wachowski's brought a very distinct style. Because one of the things that always, because I was really into the Matrix. I went to see it opening on the Friday it opened.
Mm-hmm.
Drove there after college with a friend of mine up the motorway. Uh, I own a copy of the art and making of, which has wonderful storyboards,
Mm-hmm.
for which they got on board a dedicated comic book artist, a guy by the name of Steve Scrose,
Yep.
who at the time he'd kind of become he was a rising talent in the comic book industry.
Mm-hmm.
He'd done a few short arcs in only recently launched Gambit's first ongoing comic.
Oh wow. Okay.
And in fact, he was the artist who brought Blade as he was designed based off of Wesley Snipes' depiction of him into the Marvel Universe.
Yeah.
Before that, Blade had been based off of. Well, if you haven't seen the 90s Spider-Man cartoon
Mm.
and Blade in that is more or less how Blade was depicted for a long time, for most of the late 70s and 80s into the 90s. Snipes was a massive deviation from that. But Scrose was the artist who brought that style into a thing. And for Wachowski's brought him on board. And in fact, he's not worked in comics since. He's been a purely cinematic creator as storyboard and concept artist.
That's not a surprise. Yeah.
It's a shame because he was a stunning talent. But
A lot of comic book artists do move into the storyboard role,
oh yeah, yeah.
and yeah, there's a few Transformers artists
Mm.
that sort of work in that medium now, and I think a lot of the reason for that is because they can use their talents, but they can do so in a sort of more structured environment than comics, which is, let's face it, a little bit rough working at the best of times.
Well, I mean, for Wachowski's one of the first creative teams to actually bring a dedicated comic book artist on board, because normally storyboards were done by dedicated artists, don't get me wrong,
Yeah.
but they wanted someone from that sequential storytelling background
Mm.
who could give it a particular image style, uh, which it does. I mean, seriously, Steve Jones' storyboards, this whole sequence that you're watching now is almost shot for shot in those storyboards. It's remarkable how well it's translated.
Yep.
It's a wonderful insight into the process as well, that they knew right from off what the shots they wanted.
What they wanted, what they were hoping to achieve, how they were going to do it. There's an awful lot of very, very clever stuff at work here.
Absolutely.
Quick shout out to the rooftops from Dark City.
Yep.
We see you. Anyway, sorry,
Yep.
D, as you were saying.
But it was backed up by the fact that this film is pretty stunningly cast.
Yeah.
To be fair, I mean, Carrie-Anne Moss, that first shot of her as Trinity doing her crane kick,
Mm-hmm.
but no one expected that, and suddenly it was just like, what the hell are we watching? Because no one had seen Bullet Time.
No.
This is
Well, technically, yes, they had seen a version of it, sort of,
yeah.
but it was, I mean, also as well, it's, my God, D, you've run through so
Sorry.
many things there. I'm gonna say, but so with Bullet Time, it was taking an old technique and finding a fresh new way to deal with
Absolutely.
it, which I think is brilliant. And the thing is that I don't think anyone ever involved with the Matrix came out and said, we invented this, we made
no,
this,
not at all.
we are the author. However, it's almost the fandom going, oh, this is their stuff, this is them. And of course, these guys have always, I say these guys, I'm talking about the camera team here. They take their visual ideas, and Bill Pope, who was obviously very instrumental in this as the director of photography, but it's the idea of taking these old-fashioned ideas and refreshing them. And it was in a part of Hollywood history where they were really pushing like film cameras and the film medium and trying to do as much as they can with film.
Yeah.
Ironically, just as digital was knocking on the door to destroy all the fun at the party.
And it's weird because the Matrix itself, people have been digging into it for decades now. It asks questions about AI and stuff like that, but also it's a film that it uses a lot of CGI in places, but
Yes.
it is a film where it makes use of the imperfections of it.
Yes.
You saw where Trinity was leaping through, was did her dive.
Mm.
That looks very fake, but it's intentional.
Yeah.
It's all part of it. And later on, when the helicopter explodes inside of the building, they create the shockwave, which looks unreal, but it's intentional because it's the Matrix trying to deal with stuff it wasn't designed for. It's quite fascinating.
Yeah. It's almost overloading the system.
Mm,
I will say as well with that one shot of Carrie flying through the air, she didn't even realize until I think it was the commentary, and we will talk
mm.
about the commentaries for this film along with everything else. But she was told that actually they'd taken the bottom half of her body and they'd replaced it with CG
Oh,
because of the way that she had to be positioned during that movement,
you-
that her legs were almost tied to a kind of
yeah,
I mean, they likened it to a roasted pig, which is a brave thing to say in front of the actress.
yeah,
But that was they had to secure her, so they said it just looked
yeah,
odd.
yeah,
So they did a CG legs, and they animated it just to give her legs a bit of movement. But you're right, it does look really odd. And I know people watching this today as well. Let's face it, effects have changed, times have changed. We are so used to sort of CG and both good and bad CG, that when we look at this, especially this opening scene, you might think, oh, okay, yeah, that's very flashy, but what's the point? The whole deal with this film is that there is an awful lot of thought that's gone into the script, the story, the background, everything.
yeah,
And if anything, the effects are just like the way that the writer directors are just trying to get their ideas across. They're trying to present them to the audience. Also, though, they knew, and I think they even did this at the time. They sent the studio a rough cut of that first scene. I think it was the first thing that Carrie shot. They
mm,
sent it to them to calm them down because this was all shot in Australia, which meant that it did insulate this film a little bit more than other films. So studio interference wasn't too heavy,
mm,
but they could tell it was coming. They could tell that, there was the danger of exactly what happened with Johnny Mnemonic, that the studio interferes too much. And so they sent them the rough cut of the opening scene. The studio were wowed by it, and then the studio just backed off. And it's like from that point on, the Wachowskis got to make the movie they wanted, which is really refreshing, actually.
it is.
It's individuals getting to make exactly what they want.
Yeah, and from what I gather, pretty much everyone was on board with the crew. I
Yeah.
mean, the main actors, they did a lot of the videos are out there. They did so much work learning the martial arts they needed
Yeah, absolutely.
to do the stuff themselves, to do as much themselves as they could, and it shows.
It does, even though poor old Keanu started the film, I think, wearing
Oh,
a neck brace and couldn't
that's right.
kick
Yeah, because
properly.
yeah,
He damaged himself. Hugo Weaving completely busted his hip.
mm,
Carrie damaged her legs doing a scene, and I think it's the fight in the lobby. Everyone picked up injuries, but the whole idea was, and we're going to circle round to this a lot during this
mm,
recording, folks, is that the directors wanted to make a movie and they wanted to take the best elements of everything they could and put them into this story.
yeah,
They also, in terms of best elements, when you see somebody fighting, they wanted the actor that's playing that character to be seen doing the fighting. At the time, a lot of fighting was done with stunt doubles,
yes,
clear or subtle. And this ushered in a whole era of actors doing more and more of their own stunts. In fact,
mm,
nowadays it's reflected in the fact that like you want, especially actors, you want the actor to be super ripped. You want the actor to do all his stunts. You want the actor to do this, that, and the other. This
mm,
led to incredible elements like Christopher Lee doing stunts on the set of Lord of the Rings. People suddenly wanted, if you're hired for a role, they want you to do the role.
Well, I mean, getting back to Lee, he wanted to do as much of his own sword fighting in the Star
Mm,
Wars prequels as he could, even
yeah.
though by the time he did Revenge of the Sith, he could do some of it, but he physically could not do some of it just because his body
Yeah.
would not allow him to. But the the mind was willing, so to speak.
And they do with a lot of actors as well. You'll see them. They are doing, especially the older statesmen. Think Anthony
Mm,
Hopkins. I mean, think
yeah,
Michael Caine, who could,
yeah,
let's face it, struggled to walk for a large chunk of his later career, and
mm,
so would do a scene, but it was very carefully like posed. But even then, it was still the idea of if you hire that actor, you want to see the actor in the scene. Well,
mm,
you go back 10, 15 years earlier, and they would have just used a stand-in.
yeah. Well, I mean, one of the things they did with this, because for Wachowski wanted also to bring across a lot of the at the time, Western action movies had a very particular flavour,
Mm,
but they were very embedded in what was coming out of the Asian, especially the Hong Kong scene, which has always had a very different feel to it than Western action movies.
absolutely, yeah.
And so they literally they got the master, they got Yuen Wo Ping
Yep,
as stunt coordinator. And like you say, after The Matrix, there was a huge increase in films where the actors did as much as they could, or they brought in coordinators and
yep,
specialists
yep,
from the Asian scene who could give it that flavor, give it that style that Western action movies never had. Because it's a different style.
absolutely.
It's not worse. It's just different,
Different, yeah.
and it did get overused. I mean, The Matrix became a bit of a gag at one point. I mean,
No,
well,
absolutely. It's been featured.
correctly.
A lot of humorous films sort of used it, but since we're talking about that, D,
Hmm.
what was the difference between? Because you mentioned as well they brought in a stunt team.
Yes.
So, what's the difference between a regular stunt guys where he's going right? So you swing this punch, and we'll work on you blocking that, and you'll do this. What's the difference between that and a stunt team, or rather, the stunt teams from Asia that they brought in?
Well, most of the time, those sort of stunt teams, they're very closely knit. They're very tightly wound. I mean, quite famously, Jackie Chan has his own personal stunt team,
Right.
the Jackie Chan stunt team, who he's worked with for decades.
Mm.
People have cycled in and out, but he has a very particular set of expectations of
Mm.
what they can do, and some of that is down to his how he does so much himself.
Yeah.
He,
Yeah.
it means that the rest of the team commit as well.
Hmm.
But it gives you unification. It
Yeah.
gives you a rather than having just a main stunt coordinator. Um, maybe they bring in someone to do particular sorts of fight coordination.
Yeah.
If you have a whole team doing it, that means you have people who can give more one-to-one coaching with the actors.
Specialize. Yeah.
It means that you can get them. There's more trust in there as well.
Mm. Yeah. I understand. Yeah, I get that.
And that's not to say that the other way is wrong. It's just that, particularly for the sort of wire work that's going on in the Matrix, which was something that was very heavily brought across from the, the more wuxia style of Asian
Mm.
cinema. Um, if any, as an example, anyone's seen character like Hidden Dragon,
Yeah.
floaty effect, that was a big thing in especially Asian historical martial arts epics.
Mm.
It it cannot be understated how massive that market was, and still is to some extent.
Huge. Absolutely.
And it was something that in the West, unless if you weren't someone who was a fan of that sort of film, which I was at the time, I'd
Mm.
grown up with that sort of cinema because of my
Yeah.
upbringing. But if you weren't in it, it was very hard to be aware of it because, well, it wasn't the same world. We didn't have the internet. We didn't have DVDs at this point. We were still on VHS, and the market. It was real hard to find a lot of these movies. There were importers bringing stuff in, and there were labels like Hong Kong Legends,
Yeah.
but you had to go to you had to go to your HMV and hope you had a decent specialist section. You had to find,
You had to go to the
yeah,
world cinema section,
yeah,
which was normally full of very arty films, and these would be considered arty because they were from another country. And it sounds crazy, but a comedy, something really simple, something really broad, something made for the masses,
Yeah.
might still just only appear in those art house sections purely because it was from another country.
I mean, I spent a good chunk of time working for a company called Borders,
Yes.
which I think I may have
Yes.
mentioned it before. And for a long time, I ran the multimedia department.
Mm.
That was my area because they knew I just absorbed that information.
Yeah.
And I cannot tell you how frustrating it was to have just a world cinema section and have all of this huge, broad range of movies just clumped
Yep.
together. And to see stuff start to broaden out was great. And honestly, The Matrix helped a lot with that.
I think it did. Yeah,
'Cause
absolutely.
it gave people an appetite for this sort of action that hadn't really come across before. It it gave us a synthesis of the
Hmm.
two styles, a
Mm.
synthesis that continues to this day in different ways. Um, and honestly, if you want to see something bonkers, track down some not even Hong Kong or Chinese cinema. Look up Indian, look up
Yeah.
Thai, look
Yeah.
look up African. There's some amazing films coming out of those territories, doing stuff that
They're doing stuff that is considered either too safe or not safe enough for Hollywood audiences. And
yeah,
yet the thing is, it really doesn't matter on individual techniques. It's how you
mm,
use them, it's how you blend them, it's how you involve them into a project. So for instance, you could have an entire movie just full of fixed shots of, I don't know, over the shoulder shots, bland as you like. But if it works for the individual film, and it really does work for that film and it helps bring that to life, then that's what you do. And The Matrix has a multitude of sophisticated and basic effects pushed
mm,
together, ideas and stuff that you wouldn't normally consider because it's either too safe or it's too wacky. And yet because it all suits the end result, it all works together, you end up with this really wonderful film.
you really do. And also, Hugo Weaving, frankly, a star-making turn because the Wachowskis, like I said, they cast this film impeccably.
Yes.
But Weaving was probably the most unknown of the actors coming into this
Yes.
because he was an Australian actor. He had actually done some stuff with Russell quite a few films before this, but they hadn't really come outside of Australia, or they weren't very well known.
Yeah. He was known within the country, but he wasn't
Mm.
known internationally.
And this really, I mean, I think he was cast as Elrond before this,
Hmm.
because I think he went straight to Lord of the Rings from doing The Matrix, which, man, that must be hell of a
Well, if you
feat.
consider then that he probably then went from the end of the Rings shooting back into the Matrix.
Yeah,
So he had a long old time at working. I bet he wanted some time off after all that.
well earned, because, man, the two performances. I mean, Smith is a fascinating character because he just drips arrogance and dismissiveness.
Yeah.
It's quite wonderful.
He also gives a bit of a neutral accent.
Yeah,
So he
yeah,
he works really, really hard to project this idea of authority, slightly arrogant authority. He is, I think, a very traditional villain, probably up until this point. Sorry, editor Adam, I'm talking about something that's happening on the screen, but there is a point in the film where you just think everything is a little bit odd, but you don't think anything is that suspicious, and then they sort of amp it up with an almost Cronenberg style scene,
yeah.
and just really, really effective as well. And again, you don't at this point you still don't really have much of an idea what is going on.
Oh,
And we are effectively 20 odd minutes into the film, and you're still trying to figure out what on earth is going on,
yeah.
which is great.
It really is because
Mm.
this film. I mean, it's almost a masterclass in how to tell a story and keep everyone engaged. Because I know The Matrix is not for everyone. There are some people who bounce hard off it, and I do get it, honestly. But equally, just the way it tells things. I mean,
Yeah.
like you say, we still have no clue exactly what is going on.
Yeah.
I think it's another 10, maybe 20 minutes before we get a decent answer as to we get the big reveal.
Mm.
It keeps things pretty close to its chest.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, once you know, everything suddenly is like, oh, that all makes sense. I understand. But
It's the
yeah,
build up. It's
mm,
allowing as well. It's allowing for the build up to be so long. You know, a lot of films would try and rush a little bit more quickly into it. And folks, again, I know Dee mentioned like the trailer, and the trailer kept it pretty close to its chest. But a lot of people do acknowledge that the biggest selling point with The Matrix was actually its TV spots. Because for a start, they had a website called whatisthematrix.com.
yep, yeah,
But that thing, and then a selection of, I'd say, maybe a dozen other like clips, like hero clips that would be used in every TV shot. And then you had a bunch of other things, some flashes, some other bits and bobs. But these things played relentlessly. And the main thing was this constant question: what is the Matrix? So when I said about Quentin and him being intrigued to see what the hell's going on, it really was the case. People had no idea what this film was. And of course, the studio who knew the result, knew that it was good, were happy to just chuck money at this thing. But it wasn't
yeah.
exactly like nobody, this was on nobody's radar, especially. And that's also, and if you don't mind me going off on a bit of a tangent now, Dee, but
Crack on.
the environment that this was brought into, so the World Wide Web had sort of exploded late 80s and 90s. It had sort of just hit the public consciousness. It had become big enough for it to be a thing and it to start invading things like business. Once it invades business, well, then it's part of society. So Hollywood then responded with a whole raft of films based on cyberpunk, or at least based on the internet and technology. A lot of these failed because studios didn't trust the ideas that were coming forward from a lot of the writers. They were trying to change a lot of movies, and they've done this all the way back, including Blade Runner.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, these concepts that are meant to be not particularly heroic, not particularly crowd pleasing. They're meant to have as many deep ideas as superficial action beats. So a lot of films have suffered, including, of course, the aforementioned Johnny Mnemonic. But when this was like even going through production, there was very, very little being said about it. And when this film was due to come out, the big news at the time was not about this film, but was about the fact that Star Wars was finally getting some new movies.
Yeah.
In this case, the prequels, and they were coming out. I think did they come out a couple of months before this or after? I think it was before this, because I think it was The Mummy, which obviously we've covered, folks. Please check that out. Then it was Star Wars, and then I think it was this right at the end of the year.
I think you might be right on that one, because I do remember it. It kind of,
It stole all the thunder.
yeah, it was almost unfair.
This won the Special Effects Award at the Oscars, which of course everyone expected Star Wars to win. I mean, Star
Yeah.
Wars was never going to win for its script, but there we go. But also as well, they done something. So this film did something that the other cyberpunk films hadn't done. So all films, all media has a host of ideas. If you speak to anyone on any film, I don't care if it's a romantic comedy or not, there are literally thousands of decisions that influence that film. From what the director of photography and the cameraman had for breakfast, to how the director was feeling, to if the actors liked each other, to if the lighting was right, what time of day it is. I mean, all those tiny things, as well as the big things, studio interference, the script, etc., etc. Cyberpunk as a genre started sort of 60s and 70s, really blew up in the 80s with Neuromancer. And then by I'd say the early 90s, it kind of played itself out. Like there were novels coming out that openly mocked it, like Neil Stephenson's Snow Crash. So although Hollywood then tried to give a stab at cyberpunk, they kind of failed, and you ended up with as many misses as hits. So people didn't have huge expectations for this film. They just thought, oh, it'd be another weird sci-fi film, probably a bit dark, probably a bit edgy. That's fine. But because this film not only was so well crafted, but it also listed every single influence it had. So, as I mentioned in the intro, all the action films, all the styles, all the philosophies, all the religions, they didn't, and this is clear, folks, the Wachowskis never explained the Matrix. They never told you what the film means. The whole point of them was they were never going to do that. They've never done a director's commentary. I mean, famously, they got some critics and some philosophers to battle it out on a previous track, and I've listened to one with some of the effects people, and it's utterly chaotic. They wanted you to talk about it. They wanted you to know all the ideas that were involved in this film. The good news is that fans lapped this up and they looked for meaning in every sentence, every word, every iota. This damned pill scene has so many meanings across even the last couple of decades.
Yeah.
But the downside of that is that, you and I both know at least a couple of people that really don't like this film, and they don't like it for that same reason, because there's too much there, there's too much baggage. If they'd not mentioned all of this, maybe the film would have even been received better. And the Wachowskis, for their point, always hoped that this would be a really well-received cult film. So the fact it blew up, the fact that I would sit in the store and I'm reading my Gibson, which I've read for a long time, or my Stevenson, or any of the other cyberpunk authors that I was reading way before this came out. And I'd have people barging into, it was Borders in Oxford Street at the time. And you'd have these guys in the leather coats who would come in and go, well, I'm not interested really in reading cyberpunk or sci-fi, but have you got anything on the Matrix? And I'm like,
and you just wanted to throttle them.
and this is something, and this is not me being snobbish, I assure you folks. It's just that this film lit a fire under some people, which just caused them to cosplay these characters in real life for about 2 to 3 years. It is true, isn't it, D? I'm not being silly here.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm going to say this now, by the way. You see that, sorry, editor Adam, I've got to say this. In this scene, Lawrence Fishburne is wearing a long leather coat. Neo is not wearing a long leather coat. He never wears a long leather coat in the film. How many people do you know went out and bought a long leather coat because they think that they look like Neo? No, idiots.
I mean, I tried to, thankfully, I didn't try and buy a leather trench coat, although members of my family have tried to over the years. They asked if I want a leather trench coat, and I've always said no.
Yeah.
I did try and buy an Indiana Jones style leather jacket once, which was...
Okay, that's not bad.
Yeah, my relationship with jackets is not good, frankly. But
Don't worry.
But yeah, I get completely where you're coming from. There was it's a film that invites people to take away what they want from it, but some people kind of really should have dug a little deeper, or tried to, just a little bit, for their own benefit.
Or just for the hell of it, just enjoy it as an action film. Because you know, a lot of people who love sci-fi, a lot of people who love cyberpunk will tell you it's not that big a deal at the end of the day. In fact, can I tell you how I saw this film?
Go on.
Because after years of let's say William Gibson, I mean, I have to admit, I'm like, if anyone's listening and going, yeah, he's just mentioning William Gibson for the hell of it. No, I mean, Gibson was fantastic for me, and funnily enough, I prefer his Bridge series to his Sprawl series. So the hope that the upcoming Apple show Neuromancer actually leads them into doing other stuff, and the Bridge series, I'd be happy as picking shit to see that. But when this was coming out, the build up to it, I was actually at film school. You know, so I left film school in '99. So the build up to this, that was it. The Matrix must have opened earlier because it came out just as I was leaving film school. And, there's a lot of talk
You're right,
about
yeah, because it took
yeah,
a lot of the air out of Phantom
that's
Menace's
it.
tales because it was like,
And so I was looking at this and studying this, and I was studying the lighting in this, and also talking to a lot of film friends. But funnily enough, real life can sometimes intrude on things. So I was due to go out with my housemates to go and see this film. They couldn't be asked about this film. They could not be asked. I was the one who was like, I want to go.
hmm,
So anyway, the it was I think the last day as well, or the last weekend we were at a student house, and on the Thursday night I think it was, I met a friend of a friend, and we connected. And this was somebody who all of our mutual friends, like our mutual friends knew each of us, but they'd never thought to introduce us. And we were both like two peas in a pod. And it wasn't like anything crazy or lurid. It was just we connected. And so the next night it was like, right, do I go and see The Matrix or do I just spend an evening chatting to somebody? Very much like a before sunrise, before sunset thing, if you've ever seen
hmm.
that film. And so I decided, you know what, I'm just going to have a really nice evening with somebody that I'm not going to have any sort of long term relationship with. I just want to get to know somebody who I really wish I should have known for 2 years at this point. And so we did that. So I never saw The Matrix at the cinema.
Oh
And
wow.
once I left, I was working in film, and working in film is pretty much like a laser focus for me. So I focused on that. And of course, as well, the hype was hitting me. Everyone telling me I should see this, everyone telling me this is the story. I mean, everyone spoiled everything for me almost instantly.
Oh, that sucks.
Well, no, because again, it was so overhyped that I couldn't really care. And in fact, it was a really long time. I mean, we're talking maybe 2005, 2006 before I finally got round to seeing
Oh
the
wow.
film.
So
Because,
you didn't see it until after the sequels had come out.
yeah, it was
So
because so much hype had been generated about it. I had to wait until it died down, until I could watch it with just an open mind and go, okay, this is what we're seeing. And yeah, I liked it. I enjoyed it. But especially after all those years of reading so many books and cyberpunk's a great medium to read
hmm,
because like oh god, was it the sky above the port is the color of TV tuned to a dead channel.
yeah.
That's the first thing from William Gibson's Neuromancer. Funnily enough, we see a TV with a sky that color later in the movie, but after seeing that and being free to visualize those books in my head, this was like, yeah, this is really, really good. Yeah, this would have been amazing to see on screen. By the way, not just see, hear. The
Oh
soundtrack for
yeah.
this movie is absolutely incredible. And no, I'm not talking about the band music. And I thought, yeah, this is really good. And I could see why my younger self would get swept up in this. But I'm kind of glad I didn't see it at the cinema because
I
I
I,
might have become one of those fans.
I will admit I didn't get massively over it. Although I bought the VHS, I pre-ordered the VHS. In fact, I picked it up on my way to college
Mm,
the morning it came out. Um, and then when I was at university, I happened to the house, the guy I shared a flat house with for most of
mm,
my 3 years.
yeah.
We clicked, and we were both massive sci-fi nerds. So
Oh, brilliant.
we got in the Animatrix. We watched. He picked up the video game Enter the Matrix, and
Hmm.
a few of us we went to the first night showings of the sequels in Swansea. One of them, the previous showing, there was a fight in the screen before our showing, which was okay. That's weird.
Why? I mean, I know fans got stupid over it
No idea. In fact, hilariously, I got stopped by the police on my drive out of Swansea after watching The Matrix Reloaded.
because they were looking for suspicious people in dark clothes.
Well, no, because I was on my own.
Oh, right. Okay.
Because everyone else jumped in one car and I took my car on my own, and they thought it was odd that at like 12:30 in the morning there'd be one dude driving a car through Swansea. So they pulled me over, and I was like, "I've just been to the cinema."
It's probably not the nicest thing as well to you've just gone to the cinema and you've seen a bunch of people running away from agents, and then you
Yeah,
suddenly get stopped by the police.
yeah. I mean, admittedly, I'm 6 foot. Even then, my hair had grown out, and I've always had a
Mm.
beard, so I get kind of why. But still, it was just like okay. But no, I kind of like I say I own a copy of the Art of the Matrix. I've got copies of all the films on DVD and the Animatrix, and I've dug into the inspirations that Wachowski's used to. I say because I find it fascinating because it's.
Okay.
I, but I also understand how there's a certain element where it got a little out of hand.
Well,
Put it
so
mildly.
I am going to ask you about something, but I just
Mm,
want to add in something here first because it's a good excuse to. So I mentioned William Gibson,
yes.
and people saw this and they went, "Oh, you've nicked a load from William Gibson." And people would come up to Gibson and go, "These people have nicked a load of your stuff and they've called it the Matrix." And what Gibson came back with was really nice. In fact, he wrote a foreword, I think, to the Art of the Matrix book, which you've
Mm,
got. And he said, look, the whole deal with cyberpunk is that it is a setting. I'm trying to think. For instance, Mega City 1 for Judge Dredd, or the
yeah.
Star Wars universe, or the
Yeah.
very, very popular now in the public's eye is the 40K universe. Cyberpunk is a world, it is a
Oh,
setting.
well,
There's a
hell.
lot of anti tech, but it's not generated by one source, unless you.
Well, I mean, even just to butt in for a sec, there's even Cyberpunk itself, Cyberpunk Red and Cyberpunk 2077.
Hmm,
One setting, one is the tabletop RPG, the other is what's become a very well liked video game.
and they're different beasts.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and they wear their influence on their sleeve because of literally they're called Cyberpunk. It's what it is. It's I just find it funny because, and you're probably going to maybe think a little less of me for this. I still haven't actually read any Gibson.
Yes, fine. No, honestly, that there's no snobbishness from me on that, mate.
But most of my science fiction reading up to this point had been Arthur C. Clarke,
Yeah.
uh, Asimov, stuff set in the Trek and the Star Wars universes,
Mm.
stuff I'd read in comics, the Aliens and Terminator and Predator franchises. I was kind of in that sort of mindset. It was only in like the 2000s I started reading sort of like the more modern cyberpunk, so the stuff from the guy who created Altered Carbon
Yeah, yeah.
and the like. So I read quite a lot of science fiction, but I just have these and fantasy, but I just have these slightly weird blind spots where I just have never gotten around to them. So I do find it fascinating when people talk to me about them because I do find it genuinely interesting because it's stuff where I know I have these gaps. So having them filled in for me is always really interesting.
I think with the whole cyberpunk thing as well, it's not really honestly, it is not some form of high art. I mean, it takes a lot
Hmm.
from cinema noir, like tech noir. It takes a lot from noir and pulp stories, detective stories. Uh, and then you can stick everything else in. I mean, let's face it, folks, and I'm going to be honest here. If we were going to do a podcast with movie commentaries on the most popular films, or even maybe a book series on the most popular books, well, for popular books, we would only ever do romance and romantic books because they are the
Yeah.
books that pretty much support the rest of the industry. And if we were going to do films, well, it would literally be the 3 or 4 biggest films each year, where in fact, more and more, we're thinking about doing the films we just really want to do, regardless of whether they were hits or not. And I
Yeah.
think as well, the whole idea of something can be incredibly popular and yet people will dismiss it because it's not cool or arty enough. Something else can be niche and be praised as being somehow groundbreaking, and yet like 4 people like it on the planet. There's got to be a balance. This film has obviously had polarizing opinions, but as an action movie, especially now, when people watch it now, I think a lot of the deeper meaning is completely stripped away from it. Not that you can't still read into it, but they know of it as this older film. So they watch it without any pretensions. And because a lot of the effects have been matched in recent years, so they haven't got that shock and awe of the bullet time.
Mm,
So if anything, they give it a bit of a fairer reading than fans did at the time.
that's true. Mm,
Because people were genuinely just like, what the fudge is this? They were like just stunned. And remember as well, this features Keanu Reeves, who'd not exactly had a lot of hits. And again, he'd been burned by a previous cyberpunk movie.
yeah, I think this was also after what was that one he did with
Chain
Morgan?
Reaction?
Yes, Chain Reaction. He'd had a bit of a bad run.
Yeah, there's bad management choices,
Mm,
and he couldn't seem to get a break. And also, as well, it's worth noting, as I said in the start, like this script eventually came to Keanu Reeves, but there were a whole host of other stars who were offered it and passed.
yeah,
And no, folks, I'm not just talking about Will Smith, who keeps going on about it like it gives him some relevance. I'm talking about, like, even Leonardo DiCaprio was up for this at one point and was going to do it.
yeah. And honestly, there's actors who, I mean, I struggle to see anyone other than Keanu nowadays as Neo because he does kind of put his all into it.
Mm,
But man, you hear about the names that were
mm.
potential actors to have starred in it, and you just think, wow, that could have been some interesting performances.
The most interesting one I ever heard was Sandra Bullock. And I'll
Oh,
tell you what, I would have absolutely loved that. That would have really been a seismic shift. That would have been beautiful.
hmm. I mean, in some ways, they kind of played with that gender switch with Matrix Revolution. No, Resurrection, I should say.
Mm,
Which I actually quite enjoyed that. To be fair,
mm,
it's a nice meta in what it's doing.
yeah.
But no, that's an interesting one though. I can imagine that. Yeah.
Well, it's maybe worth talking about this as well because the Wachowskis always imagined, so they imagined a grand story. It's funny enough, very much like George Lucas, and
Mm,
like Lucas, they ended up splitting it, and they took a chunk of it and made that the first film, which
yes.
is why they were able to move on with two and three so quickly. But movie one was based on, or in one of the few things they've said about this, movie one was based on Neo's choice. Movie two was based on Neo's choice, but it should be kind of obvious to everyone what the choice should be, including Neo. And then movie three is Neo having to make the bigger choices. And one thing
Mm,
they talked about Neo's journey as well is what happens if you become not a god, but if you become powerful in that sense, you can affect the world around you, but you're not exactly benevolent. You have the one or two people that you care for, and then everyone else is kind of background, which, funnily enough, is exactly what Dark City ended up being.
yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's crazy. And the other thing that they came out with as well, and I don't worry, I'm going to let you erupt on the rest of this, but one thing that they came out with, and I'm going to say it's Lily who said this, I think. I think so. Correct me if I'm wrong, chat, but she's said multiple times that whenever you watch a movie, you're technically watching The Matrix because you're always watching a version of reality. And each film you watch, be it Star Wars, be it a thriller, be it a horror, has its own rules for that universe. You buy into the fact that in a horror movie, the bad guy can suddenly be everywhere at once and the good guys make all the wrong decisions. If it's a comedy film, you can buy into the fact that hilarity can ensue and yet nobody faces
Mm,
consequences. If it's an action film, you can buy into the fact that cars blow up and people walk away unscathed, or nobody seems to mind the collateral damage. It's almost, and I kid you not, it's almost like Last Action Hero, but with a layer of knowledge to it, which is why
wow.
Last Action Hero keeps going up in my estimations. But
Mm,
I like the fact that they brought all of these ideas, and if anything, they've kind of made it even harder for certain people to accept the movie because rather than just saying this is what it's all about, they keep going, well, this is what it could be. What do you think?
yeah. I mean, I do appreciate that, even though they have done a lot of content for Matrix, because you had the three sequels, you had
Mm,
some comic books, some actually really good comics, to be fair.
mm.
You had the Animatrix, you had Enter the Matrix, which is a fascinating. It's not good, but it's fascinating,
Okay.
if that makes sense. And then you had Matrix Online, which is directly referenced in Matrix Resurrection.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's all real within the world,
Yeah.
but it's never really kind of rammed down your throat, if that makes sense.
Mm.
They give you all the pieces and just say you can take what you want from
Mm.
it.
Absolutely. Now, since you mentioned it, I've got to ask you, so people watching this, again, thanks to streaming services and the way that the world works, yeah, they might have seen The Matrix, but I will bet that only 10% of people that watch The Matrix now even have a clue what the Animatrix is. So, D,
Oh.
what on earth was the Animatrix?
Well, the Animatrix was basically a lead-in to the Matrix Reloaded and Revolution,
Oh, the two sequels.
the two sequels. Um,
Yeah.
it was part of a broader. The Matrix was a success,
Yeah,
and
a big one.
as they geared up to do the sequels,
Hmm.
Wachowski's basically turned it into really one of the first true multimedia events,
Yeah,
which was
yeah.
not something we'd really had. Even Star Wars hadn't really done this. Lucas kind of toyed with it. We had the Clone Wars animation from Genndy Tartakovsky between Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith, but the Matrix kind of went all in.
Yeah,
So we had
absolutely.
the Animatrix, which is for Wachowski's basically going to, because what they've never been shy about their love of anime.
Mm,
Ja- the animation coming out of Japan and the Asian markets.
yeah,
And so they approached a whole bunch of animation studios over there,
yeah.
the likes of Studio IG, the team at Square Enix who did Final Fantasy Spirits Within,
Mm.
and they gave them basically the tools to play in their world.
Oh, wow.
And they created it. It's like a 60-minute anthology series
Yeah.
in total, as in 60 minutes total.
Mm.
Um, and some of them are barely 10 minutes long.
Yeah.
Others, there's the beef of it is, I think it's 2 20-minuters, I think, which form,
Oh, it's like the rise of the machines or the something age. Yeah,
yes, which tells the story of how the machines came to
got there.
be,
Yeah.
humanity's reaction, and the war. And honestly, it is remarkably well done. But in amongst that, you have these other stories. You have, I think it's the Courier, which was the one done by the guys at Square Enix,
Okay.
which is a beautifully CGI animated piece,
Mm.
initially based around their version of this dojo fight scene between
Mm.
two crew of another ship, a ship that is referenced.
Yeah.
Actually, yeah, it's the Last Flight of the Osiris ship
Oh,
that is,
yes, yes, yes. Yeah.
yeah, and it tells a story that runs into Reloaded, and is kind of it's the instigating incident.
It's a story that runs through a fight, which is lovely.
Yeah, you then have another couple of bits. There's a piece
World
by the
record.
team. Yeah, there's a piece by the team behind Ninja Scroll,
Mhm.
which it's a period piece, but it's not.
Yeah.
So it's all really quite fascinating. Well, I say it's 60 minutes
Yeah.
at most, but if you're diving into the Matrix, you kind of want it's something that's worth sticking in there.
Yeah. And it shows as well that the creators had a world, had an idea of what they were doing, and as you mentioned as well, the comics, like even when they were going, I think, into production on the Matrix, they were saying about, because they produced comics already, so
Mm.
they were looking to get other comics out there and get other information out there and just provide as much, as you say, a multimedia event.
Yeah.
So fans got hit with this in a way that that year's Star Wars was focused on pogs that you got on crisp packets or sticker
Yeah.
albums or action figures or
Yeah.
and yet this was like here is more media. And also as well, the Wachowskis, I think it was very soon after this as well, they started presenting stuff. And I'm trying to think if I'd like to say it was Ghost in the Shell that got a wider release because of them.
Ghost in the Shell 2,
Yeah, Ghost in the
Innocence,
Shell too.
the sequel, which is a film that a lot of people who enjoyed Ghost in the Shell bounced off of, but it actually
Yes.
works very well as a companion piece alongside the Matrix universe.
Yeah.
Because obviously the Wachowskis took a lot of inspiration from Ghost in the Shell,
Mm.
both the anime and the original manga. Which, side note, I'm really glad that people nowadays, the modern audiences, are starting to see that with the new adaptation.
Yeah.
Because I kind of I'm all about the original Ghost in the Shell stuff.
Oh, absolutely.
But no, it was a real hit. I mean, they even got in Enter the Matrix. Support. It's a game that it's interesting. Its
Okay.
development was weird because it's a game that nowadays it's really hard to explain to people because
Of formats or the layout, or I know games were going through a lot of changes at that point anyway.
yeah. So it's a third-person action game. The id-
Okay.
it takes place alongside the events of the Matrix sequels.
Right.
You choose to play Jada Pinkett Smith's Niobe
Oh, okay.
or her first officer Ghost.
Right.
And whilst they were filming the Matrix sequels, they
Yeah.
shot specific footage just for the game.
Nice. I like it when people do that.
There's stuff that never appears anywhere else, but you
Mm.
actually you do stuff. So the reactor mission, the
Yeah.
missions where the teams are taking out elements of the Matrix infrastructure, you
Mm.
you play one of those sabotage missions. But it's fascinating because at the time, a third person, they wanted to try and replicate the martial arts style of the Matrix, this
Okay.
fluid, free flowing, multiple discipline style,
Wow.
whilst also being able to incorporate gunplay.
Yeah.
Um, Now, prior to this, we'd had Max Payne.
Yes.
Max Payne had come out after the Matrix and was the first video game to really have a bullet time mechanic. And
Yeah.
honestly, not many others managed to equal it. And it did
Mm.
even get a very good martial arts mod, which let you
Yeah.
do the full trench coat.
The full experience.
Yeah, it let you do that in the Max
Yeah.
Payne world.
Nice.
And there were mods. The modern scene tried to do things with the Matrix.
Mm.
Enter the Matrix was developed by, I think it was Dave Perry at Shiny and his team at Shiny Entertainment.
Okay.
Now, people don't know, Dave was kind of a legend at this point because he had been involved in a lot of really solid platformers in the 90s.
Nice. Nice.
And his team went on to do things like Earthworm Jim and
Oh,
MDK.
brilliant. Cool.
Uh, and so the Wachowskis approached him to do this Enter the Matrix, which
Mm.
it struggled. The cutscenes are great. The fact that they actually have the actual actors doing the VA work,
Yeah.
it was not a common thing at the time. It wasn't expected. But the game didn't arrive in time for the films. It was delayed, which was frustrating. But it had something. It had my mate who had it on the PS2
Yeah.
dug really into it. There were code. There was coding in there that you could decipher, and if you could decipher it, you could then access additional content.
Oh, fantastic.
Not, and this is stuff that you kind of had to have an understanding of the programming languages involved to do it.
Yeah.
There was other stuff to find that didn't need that, but it was a game that worked on layers. It was just, I mean, as an experience, brilliant. As a game,
Mm.
not so much. It's just a shame that it, people expected too much from it.
people did suddenly expect the world from
Yeah,
everything involved in this film, including as well like the sequels, which the Wachowskis did what they wanted to do, not necessarily what the audience wanted. The audience
absolutely.
would have wanted more heroic stuff, more honestly, more of the same. Whereas the Wachowskis wanted to go in a different direction, so they knew that it wouldn't go down as well, and yet it still did gangbuster business.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's the weird thing with Hollywood is you can have a bad sequel to a good first film, and it still make more money.
Oh, the thing I find remarkable is the characters have stuck to their guns on that point.
Yeah.
Because if you look at their filmography over nearly 3 decades, actually, yeah, it's been 3 decades since Bounce. Let's go with their 30-year career. I mean, the stuff they produced. I mean, after The Matrix and the sequels,
Mm.
they did Speed Racer.
Yep.
They did Cloud Atlas
Yep.
as a
Which
co-direction.
I believe as well that they feel that Cloud Atlas is their greatest work.
I can fully believe that.
I've seen at least one or two places where they've said that, and yet I think to a large audience they were mostly apathetic to it.
Which I don't get because it's a remarkable piece of filmmaking.
Mm.
It's just sticking. I can understand it can be a bit. You need to get your head into a certain amount of right space to understand the narrative. But I thoroughly enjoyed myself with Cloud Atlas, and I've never read the book,
Yeah.
so that probably helped on that score. But they were adapting the book that, by all accounts, is very difficult to film. They've ended Jupiter Ascending, which
Hmm.
is probably, to most people's understanding, their least work. But
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. It's trying to do stuff differently, if nothing else. Bit clumsily at times, but it's trying to do something, and it looks fantastic doing it.
It's just a shame that it was the film that sort of broke the relationship between Warner's and the Wachowskis.
Yeah,
And it sort of led to obviously the more recent developments that are slightly more antagonistic between the two.
mm. But it did then lead them to go to Netflix, and with Joe Straczynski, the creator of Babylon 5, they did
Mm.
Sense8,
Yes.
which is 2 seasons of a frankly remarkable piece of not just science fiction, but pure fiction in its own right. It it's got a lot of really there's stuff in there which will make people uncomfortable, but
Yeah.
it's the sort of uncomfortable that's good because it's pushing you to expand your horizons. It's probably a bit blunter than what they were trying to do with the Matrix, because by that point they were both well in their journeys to transitioning.
Yep.
Um, if anyone is watching this is unaware, the Matrix has a very big trans audience who see that as a
Yeah.
metaphor for that, which is understandable. And given how the Wachowskis themselves have transitioned over since then, they've taken that that's become a bit understood as a bit more of perhaps intentional than
It
the
was
was intended. But
it's a challenging thing because
it is,
they've spoken very frankly about it. Again, like almost everything else, as long as it's not, do you want to know what the meaning of this film is? They will talk about it. And one
yeah.
thing that they've said as well is, and I think that the wording they use as well, I think it was something along the lines of Lana said, they weren't aware how present the theme of sexuality was in this film, but they can now
Mm.
acknowledge after the effect that clearly the stuff they were thinking of, yes, it's pretty obvious now that yes, that's why they were doing it. But at the time, they weren't doing it. And in fact, although they had the idea, like for instance, famously, Switch was meant to be, I think it was male in the real world and female in the Matrix.
Yes, yeah, yeah.
The studios didn't want that. That was one of the ideas they just couldn't get their head around, which for me sounds kind of like, I know studios were a little bit dim to this sort of stuff even then, but I'm surprised they didn't let that one through, because that's with everything else going on in this movie, surely that would have been nothing to them. But they said that they sort of they held off on a lot of the more extreme stuff, but it has been heartening. And because they've led the way and obviously openly transitioned, that a lot of fans now champion this. But
Yeah.
again, this is they would be the Wachowskis would be the first people to say, look, if you watch this and you see that in this film, great, celebrate it. Celebrate
Mm,
everything. If you are watching it and you just want a sci-fi film, watch it, enjoy it as well. It doesn't have to mean anything. And that's, trust me,
absolutely.
that's not me like poo-pooing anyone's view on this.
Mm,
Frankly, a film that so many people seem to champion nowadays, who are not the sort of people that I would like to share a space with, who have very closed minds, who talk about red pills in a quite derogatory sense. The fact that they celebrate the same film that is seen for its trans awakening sub themes, I love the irony. I really do. It's like,
yeah.
if you can't accept new ideas, why are you even bothering enjoying media in the first place? Sorry, I don't know where that rant came from.
No, it's all good. I mean, this is the sort of thing The Matrix inspires that sort of conversation, and I think
Yeah.
that's great.
Can we
'Cause
can we quickly talk about Joe?
I think we should, because Joe Panitaliano is
Oh,
I
well
love him
done,
in
by the
this.
way. Well done.
Or I
So
could have
can
just
you
gone with
say can you
Joey
say that again for me?
Joe Panitaliano.
Thank you. I'm going to clip that and now add that in. So whenever I need to say his name, I'm just going to use you saying it because you say it so much better.
I may have still gotten it wrong, but I try. Damn it,
But
I try.
he was one of the actors that obviously came over from Bound. So a
Yes.
little bit of extra background to this. So the Wachowskis actually did a bit of a three-pronged attack to this film. The first thing is they sold a script, which was called Assassins. It was made later on. It was
Oh
made with
yes,
Sly Stallone and
Stallone and
Antonio
Banderas
Banderas,
and Sharon
and it
Stone.
was
That was for Denver.
no,
That was a
that
different
was the
movie. Yeah.
specialist. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Sorry.
So, but Assassins was butchered by another script editor or doctor or another writer, and they unsuccessfully tried to take their names off the script. That they wanted nothing to do with it. Then they had this idea for the Matrix, so they said, "Well, look, you probably don't want to give us this to direct because it's such a big deal. Let's make a film as a warm up." So that's when they made Bound. And let's face it as well, they did have a really cheeky way of pitching the film. They were like, so there's a mob boss, yep, and she's a lesbian, okay? And she has a really nasty mob boss partner, okay? And then she meets a plumber, okay? And then that plumber's a lesbian, okay? Yeah. And the studios just went, okay, fine. And the thing was, they were selling it on the lowest note, but as you've said as well, it is a cracking film. It's really
Yeah.
done.
And
Joe
same with
plays this wonderfully horrible person as well.
oh yeah, he plays an absolute scumbag in that film, and he's
Oh,
great.
I do have. I've not done this too many times, and I've steered clear of it for a couple of our videos now. But I do want to say one thing that I'm really impressed by. Joe is a vegetarian. Joe
Oh, I
does, yeah. So as a lovely, and this is a kind of an example of how the film, like you can choose to take so many examples and completely overblow them. But I think he was eating lion's mane mushroom because that has a texture very similar to
yeah,
steak,
yeah.
and they use some effects and therefore blah blah blah. But I think Joe really hated it anyway, and so he was spitting it out and heaving during the scene because it was whatever. But the fact that he still played it like this, but it does add that extra layer because you're going, well, you're watching a scene in which a character is talking about steak, but even the steak isn't real. Even the steak isn't real. And I love, you have to accept, look, when you watch a movie, you're watching a made up world. There might be people in front of you eating a meal or having sex or dying or having a fight. And you believe in that moment that that's reality. But there's a bunch of sparks stood around. There's a guy holding a boom over their heads. That light is not real. And it's like that's why this film, when it asks those questions, it kind of pops the bubble for some people. So they don't want to read too much into it. They'd rather go, look, it's an action movie. Get off my tail. It's a film where Keanu fires a gun, a lot of guns. Okay, fine. That's cool for you. But it's
Yeah.
just this once you start reading into it, like Joe and the mushroom steak, you can get very, very deep.
Oh yes, you can. It's utterly fascinating, but equally, like you say, sometimes, as
Mm,
he says, ignorance is bliss,
yeah.
and sometimes an action movie can just be an action movie. But
And it's nice as well that they've got a lot of the actors in here as well are, as you said, with Hugo, they're not that well known. I mean, I'd argue Lawrence was better known than Keanu because
yeah,
just of
yeah,
his body of his work. But Carrie-Anne Moss was like coming out of dramas and soap operas and minor
mm,
stuff. And if you go down the list, a lot of them you've never you've never seen before. In fact, a lot of them wouldn't make that many more appearances outside of this film. So
no,
it kind of helped that you didn't know these guys because they were really sort of interesting characters on screen.
mm.
Did
And
you did you buy in? Did you have the Matrix phone?
no, I actually didn't have a mobile phone till two, late 2000, and that was kind of forced on me because when I went to uni, my parents wanted to be able to get in touch with me.
No, no,
I,
don't worry.
I
I had the same thing. I held off as long as I could. I think at the time this movie came out, I had a pager, which people won't realize was just like a little mobile-esque thing that you clip to your waist, and you
mm,
would get like a fifth. People could send you. They would get this. They would phone up a service. They would relay a message to you. That person would type it out and send it to your little device, and your little device would then basically send you a 50-character text message, and that was it. And it was the weirdest thing. I can't believe that we had them at the time. They don't really. I don't think they've lasted too well since, but
uh, pages are still used by a
medical
few
staff, I think.
medical staff, and I've heard that folks who do still use them, there is actually they have a good reason for still using them because it's still
Okay.
a fairly it's a very stable system.
Yeah. Lordy.
So unlike unlike modern phones where sometimes signals can be
Well, the irony about the whole phone with this, because again, the Matrix didn't launch with a load of what you would call traditional merchandise. There
mm,
weren't action figures. I mean, it was quite an adult film, let's face it.
yeah,
And but one of the oddities was that the phone they use in this film is a regular phone, and it was available at the time.
yeah.
And I have friends who had it, and I can assure you that that pop down microphone probably worked about 200 to 300 times before one time you pressed it, the whole thing would shoot off, and you'd have to replace the phone. But they then marketed a Matrix phone, which I think was a Nokia phone. And I
Mm.
mean, talk about bells and whistles. It has so much on it. And I have to admit, I'm still tempted to get this thing. It's an absolute block. It's a brick. And it has so much garish stuff. It almost looks like it was out of Tron. But in terms of marketing, oh, it looks so good.
I mean, that's the thing. The Matrix, thi- this was a because people didn't know what it was. It wasn't marketed as a big
Yeah.
splashy franchise movie. It wasn't marketed with lots of tie-ins. They had the phone.
Mm.
That was kind of it, and that kind of built out of the mystique of the film itself. Everything else, like you say, comes later. I mean, it didn't. They didn't get action figures till hell. I don't think they did figures based on this film until just before the sequels came out.
I didn't even realize there were action figures. That
Yeah,
that tells you how disconnected I was.
I think they came from McFarlane.
Oh, okay.
'Cause at the time, McFarlane figures they were kind of the name in doing high-end
Mm.
movie tie-in figures of although whether they'd kind of got started to do a lot of mini statues more than figures by
Yeah.
that point.
Yeah.
For a lot of folks, they kind of moved back to doing straight action figures more than that style nowadays. But it was a bit of an odd phase for them. Man, I do love though how before she talks to him, he has to accept a cookie.
Yes.
That's a joke that will never not be hilarious to a certain, especially it just gets funnier and funnier as you have to do that more often on web pages nowadays. It's
Well, one thing as well, and this is, I sort of wanted to mention this early on as well, with when you saw Mr. Anderson and in his room, is that back at this point, a home computer didn't mean a single laptop or a single box connected to just a keyboard and a mouse. There was a separate drive. In fact, there would be multiple separate drives. There would be a
yeah,
separate modem. There might be a separate import stick. There might be a separate dongle. There might be a separate power supply. You might have an additional disk drive or multiple disk drives. The microphone was standard. If you wanted to record sound, might have a separate mixer. And I'm not talking about the sort of podcast setups that people take for granted nowadays. It's just that for one big computer, you had to have a lot of physical stuff.
yeah,
And if anything, that kind of played into this sort of, because let's face it, the Matrix, at different points, it takes the element of cyberpunk, or rather steampunk, and sort of plays with it. So
mm,
instead of, I don't know, like with the agents, instead of all the brass and the weird like machines and other stuff, they have an old ring binder. And the guy patiently unwinds the string around this binder, something that most people today have never seen because I think they've fallen out of fashion. But fashion use anyway. But I love the idea that back then you did used to, if you wanted a big computer setup, you would have to get a lot of stuff on a desk.
oh yeah. I mean, at one point, our home computing setup, even buying off from PC World, was
Yeah.
just you would you'd have
You
like
were assembling a big old machine, weren't you?
you had 4 boxes of stuff you were taking home with you,
Mhm.
and nowadays
Fun.
you can just about get it in one, and even then, for a decent rig, it can still be a chunky piece of kit. Although, what was it? I found a great image. I posted it over in the Fluffenhammer a couple of days ago. Someone found an image of a brick of PS2 memory cards,
Oh, wow. Okay.
and we're talking stacked like 10 high,
Mm.
6 across, 10 deep, something
Oh
like
my
that.
God. Wow.
And they'd had, and the viewer poster said they'd had people guessing that that must have been a few gigs worth of storage. And they're like, no, no,
No, no.
that combined storage is a mighty 80 megabytes.
Yeah,
It's like, oh my God.
films, and if you think as well that computers were, and the thing is, they weren't necessarily challenged. Like,
Mm,
you can buy the most expensive. I mean, look, people listening now, I bet between people listening, we have people that are listening on bare bones. They might be listening via Spotify. Thank you if you are. You might be listening just in the background on your computer, your work computer, maybe your mobile phone. But the fact is that we've got people listening who might have a ton of computer power behind them, or we might have people that are listening on the most basic device. The fact is, you're always going to be pushing your limits. Back then, we were pushing limits just to show 5 or 6 seconds of film image on a computer ad on a computer. That was like the big deal for a lot of computers. I mean, sure, there were ones where it was a lot more, but the average home computer was doing real basic stuff.
yeah. I mean, you were talking earlier on about the marketing campaign for the Matrix, how a lot of it
Mm,
was the TV ads. I remember trying to watch those on
yeah,
QuickTime online down and taking like 20 minutes just to
just to
give a,
download it.
just give a video so I could watch the whole what minute, maybe at most, probably
And
less than that.
this was pre YouTube, right?
Yeah,
This
God,
had
yeah.
to be, yeah.
This is like, I mean, YouTube was 2010s.
Oh God, yeah.
It's quite a young service in the grand scheme of things.
Um,
Yeah, yeah.
so young
Oh,
is a relative term when either Dio and I mention it. Okay, so
yes, yes, yeah,
please resist any cruel
yes,
comments.
yes. I don't think YouTube's old enough to be able to legally buy a drink yet.
Goodness. I
So,
I think I jumped online for the first time in, I want to say, 92. And I used it to, funnily enough, I used my one chance because I knew somebody who had a setup. They showed me how to use it. And
mm,
so I had one opportunity to use this thing, World Wide Web. I had no idea what it was. So I used it and I reached out to ILM in
oh wow,
America. And I said, I'd really like to just know more about you. I'd just like to, I mean, I can't go out there. Trust me, I wasn't stupid enough to ask for a tour or anything. I
mm,
said, I'm not never going to do that. But you know what? This might be the only chance I ever get to speak to somebody there. So it would be nice if you could just say hello back. That's all I care about. And about a month later, through the post, I got a big letter. It wasn't a parcel, it was a letter. But it was like it had some guides on it. It had a little handwritten note from
oh,
someone at ILM. It was basically saying, thank you for reaching out. Thank you for using the internet. We're glad that people outside of tech nerds are using it. Because back then people didn't.
yeah,
It was still coming into its own. So the irony is that the Matrix, for all of its warnings about AI and the rise of the machines and stuff, by the way, that was in people's thoughts for a long time, but seems to be almost pushed to the background in today's AI obsessed world. But yeah, it just feels a little bit more. The film feels more relevant now because of its AI stuff than it did
yeah,
back then.
mm,
But unfortunately, the reality of AI is it's far easier for it to creep into our lives thanks to corporate power than the main villains of this film sort of employ. If that makes any sense.
it
Don't worry,
does.
folks. That was a classic example where Adam loses entire track of what he was saying halfway through a sentence.
No, I get it. It's kind of I do find the current discourse about quotation marks AI fascinating though because
Mm.
what people think of today as AI, it's not. It's not an intelligence. It
Oh no, it's far from it. It's just a bad algorithm.
yeah. It is there potential for there to be a sentience
Yes.
out of it, possibly,
Eventually, yeah.
but nothing is anywhere near there yet. And when
Mm.
it does, I mean, I find the idea of actual AI kind of fascinating, but the the way it's currently being implemented or
Mm.
the approach to it is yeah, I mean you can kind of understand why the machines would kind of make us into batteries, can't you?
Mm. I just realized, by the way, I know this sounds a bit odd, but I just realized
Hmm.
that looks like an unsupported staircase.
Uh,
There aren't that many unsupported staircases of that. I mean, because
hmm,
it's a set, I'd imagine. I think most of this film was sets,
yeah.
specifically built sets, as opposed to real life. But unsupported staircases are kind of just because I used to have one
Hmm.
at the bank I worked in. And so I get flashbacks to an even more evil corporate structure, the old bank I used to work for.
Yeah, there's a. I mean, architecturally, things like that are kind of interesting.
Mm.
Oh,
I do
and
like as well the idea of the trap, because they really are doing quite a standard movie if you think about the beats,
mm,
the challenges, the high point, the low point, the oh my god, everything is going wrong. They do a lot of those traditional beats. It's just they're doing it in such a stylized manner. It's really nicely done. And yeah, a
mm,
lot of credit as well needs to go to Bill Pope. So very quickly, if you don't mind me doing a bit of a
no, go on.
cinematography thing. So Bill was one of several people, and we've already mentioned this before as well on things like Dark City. So I won't go too much into it. But one of this group of cinematographers that was really happy to play with light and play with technology and try and make film a little bit more than it was. So using a lot of special techniques to enhance film beyond what people did. You're looking in this film, you're looking, for instance, at a lot of screens on on the screen, if you see what I mean. The
Yeah.
screens are within the frame. And so they've worked really hard to make them show well. The lighting is incredibly subtle for most of the film, and yet very, very stylized. Lots and lots of stuff going on. And just really soft as well. And I know during elements of this, they had huge generators like hoisted into the air on massive cranes to provide them the power they needed to light certain elements because they were 1 or 2 or 3 stories up. And so they needed to get that power everywhere. This was a huge challenge. And yet, at the same time, with it all being so technical, there was also as well a lot of old fashioned, really basic stuff being used. So, for instance, and again, sorry, Editor Adam, but we have, like, for instance, a camera on extremely low dolly moving forward. We have a framing which is specifically blocked on either side. So you have a vertical slit showing in a horizontal frame. And you have all sorts of lovely little technical ideas, and a lot of them are basic. You see them for a few seconds, but they just work so well and they stick with you. Really well done by Bill Pope. And I wish we
absolutely.
could talk about the music, but unfortunately, we can't hear it as we're recording this. But it is absolutely stunning and
It is.
almost, I'd say, drives the film.
Yeah, I mean, the soundtrack is a bit of an all-timer. They pulled in was it Junkie XL who did? Hang on, let me check because I have a lot of the Matrix soundtracks stored away in places, but Matrix.
When you say, sorry, Junkie XL, are you talking about the band soundtrack?
Yes, because there's two different. There's Don Davis, I think, who did the actual soundtrack.
Yeah.
And then there's the tracks that they pulled in from other groups. So
Okay, so sorry, I'm gonna jump in. So, Dee, maybe explain to folks. We're talking about 2 soundtracks. This is something as well that
Yes,
has
sorry,
definitely.
yeah.
This is definitely not a thing that people do nowadays. But didn't it used to be the case that you couldn't see a trailer at this point without them saying, "This movie also features music from artists such as blah 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 blah."
It wouldn't be uncommon, to be fair. If the film specifically used music from artists and not just a score, then quite often you would find particular tracks might get highlighted, especially if it's the big trailer. Once the film's been out, then trailers might start to add in at the end these tracks available on this
Yep.
soundtrack. As we're quite aware, the films themselves will tell you where
Yep.
you can get them
Yep.
during the credit sequence. But for Matrix, it was a bit of a deal because it was one of, I don't want to say it was one of the first, but it was one of the films that really led with having the music from the motion picture as well as the motion picture score.
Like both were equally valid.
They were, and they're both brilliant. But folks do tend to, as a rule, remember more things like Spy Break from the lobby scene.
Yeah.
Just because
it's part of such a tremendous scene.
Yeah. And honestly, I'm looking at the notable tracks from the music from the motion picture. The only slight moment go is the fact that Marilyn Manson's on the end credits, which nowadays is like, oh.
Well, no, Marilyn Manson, his song was over all of the TV spots. And he was probably the most heavily pushed. Whereas nowadays, as you say, there's certain tracks that you do remember, but if anything, I would say Dragula was probably the most remembered nowadays because it just is that first hit of real pulsing music. And then it segues into a Prodigy song, I think. Shell Shock?
Minefields, I think.
Oh, that's it, Minefields. And they just, but at the time, so this was even going back to like early 90s, but they realized, I think The Crow was one of the big ones to do it. So
Yeah.
Warner Brothers would go, well, why don't we just, for a start, why don't we just feature Warner Brothers artists on our film? But also, if we use like pop tracks at certain points, then we can put out the motion picture. So we then get the official soundtrack on Warner Brothers, the artists all on Warner Brothers as the artist soundtrack, and then we can publicize the fact they've all got their own individual films. Individual albums also on Warner Brothers, and they can make so much money from that. But within about 10 years, people really started to get tired of them shoehorning. And there's a difference as well between featuring a song in a particular moment and just shoehorning songs in. And this, I think, led to one of the I think the series of films where you just start to overuse featured tracks, and it's sort of died down now. You might have one or two, like you might have, I don't know, in an Iron Man film, you're having one AC/DC song,
Mm.
and it might play once or twice, but you wouldn't then have 10 other AC/DC songs playing through the whole film. So yeah, a bit of a sea change.
Absolutely.
I'll tell you what, we have done, by the way, we have done a fantastic job because we have done the very essence so far of a Matrix commentary. We have talked about the Matrix without talking about the Matrix, which I think is
Yeah.
great. I have every intention of continuing this forward. He says just completely clamming up.
Sorry, I was just struck by Joey Pants going full creep here. It's
Well,
it's a
he
great.
does represent a great character, doesn't he?
He does, and you do generally understand where Cypher's coming from. He didn't ask to be pulled out.
Yeah, yeah,
Like he says, ignorance is bliss. I mean, he's been a loyal soldier.
yeah.
He just
He's just tired of it all.
yeah, he just wants to go back in and not remember anything. There's something enticing about that prospect
Mm,
because pretty much the real world of them they live in,
yeah.
it's not particularly pleasant.
No,
Everything takes work, and as we see in the sequels, Zion is not
not perfect.
great. No, it's not great in its own right.
Well, I think this is something that the Wachowskis said as well is, look, in this first film, you're led to believe that everything in the Matrix is bad and everything outside of the Matrix is good. But at some point, Neo realizes that the Oracle is just a program.
Yeah.
And so therefore, why isn't she bad?
Mm. I mean, one of the delightful things about Resurrection is
Mm,
that, for one thing, it shows a world where humans and machines are actually working together.
yeah,
There are factions among the machines now. In
yeah.
fact, there always were, as we see in the sequels, but it's much more out there. So,
It's much more nuanced, isn't it?
yeah.
Yeah.
And
Do you think that their willingness to play fast to continue with their story, even though they knew it wasn't what the audience wanted, that they wanted to continue making the film in the way that they perceived it. Do you think that was the right decision?
I think so, because
Good.
I would rather watch a film that the filmmaker wanted and how they intended it to be seen,
Yeah.
than something that has been focus grouped to an inch of its life.
Mm.
You know, I mean, don't get me wrong. There can be a place for it. There are films that have been saved by that, but it can so often go the wrong way
Yeah.
and just be. Good example. One of my favorite movies, Kingdom of Heaven.
Okay.
The theatrical cut is
Not
a
the greatest?
it's a difficult watch.
Yeah.
The extended cut, the director's cut, Ridley Scott's intended release,
Yeah.
even with the orchestral intermission midway through the film, is frankly brilliant. even
Yeah.
amongst his own storied filmography,
It's right up there.
it stands out
Yeah.
by quite a mark, and it shows you that. I mean, I do actually understand why they wanted a shorter cut, because it is a very long film. That's a tough thing to get people to sit. Folks, yesterday I went and watched The Odyssey in the morning. I've spent most of today
Decompressing?
decompressing with a massive headache because that was a lot of work to sit through. But it was worth it, and I
Yeah.
enjoyed it. And sometimes you want to go and see the film the filmmaker intended, not the film the studio got cold feet
Yeah.
about and go, oh, we can't do that. Let's put what we can out.
Well, this is the thing with cyberpunk as well. It's not cyberpunk is not the be all and end all. Again, it's like an action film. An action film, is it an action drama? Is it an action comedy? Is it an action thriller?
Mm.
Is it aimed at kids? Is it aimed at adults? Is it gory? Is that horror? Does it scare you? It's not. It's just action is just a genre. There's a lot in there. Cyberpunk is a genre, yes, but cyberpunk has a lot of different elements to it. So
Yeah.
cyberpunk has like questions that it normally wants to ask. I think the big challenge is studios tend, and they've done this on more than one occasion, like with Blade Runner, I think with Lawnmower Man as well, is that they worry that, oh, we don't like the idea that there are too many questions here. We need more action. That will help people. That will deflect people thinking too much about the film. And I think with this film, I think it's both its blessing and a curse. It is on one hand an action film, but on the other hand, it does ask a lot of questions. I think the questions ended up causing it more hassle than it was worth in the long run. But yeah, it's nice that it still offers you both ways to see it. It's really cool.
It
And
is.
what did you think then of the latest film? And I'll say off the bat now,
Mm.
I thought I thought it was a great idea. I
Mhm.
thought that this last film that came out actually should have been a trilogy in its own right, and it feels like it had too much poured into one film.
Mm.
But also the fact that they forced the Wachowskis to make this, and it's public knowledge that they forced them to make it. And so they were so hell bent on forcing them to make it that even when they wrote the script, including the fact that Warner Brothers was forcing them to
I know.
make a sequel, the the fact that they still allowed essentially a film that was taking the mick out of them to go ahead, I think it's got good points. Do I think it
Mm.
was effectively finished? No, I thought there's too much in there, and I thought it was messy as hell. But
I can agree. There were points where I thought, have I missed something? Because like they got Christina Ricci in old woman makeup to
yep,
play Niobe's partner, which was great. I mean, I love seeing Christina Ricci in anything, but you just think, was there supposed to be something more? Were we supposed to have stuff with them in the past? Were we supposed to have flashbacks?
mm,
Um, I mean, I thought it was another film where the casting was pretty impeccable. To be fair, I mean,
yeah,
I always get his name wrong, but the guy they cast in place of Lawrence Fishburne
yes,
as Morpheus is an actor who, anytime I see him in anything nowadays, I'm always there because he's quite brilliant. He was in the Watchmen TV show. He was Black Manta in the Aquaman films.
yep.
He's Wonder Man currently in the Marvel TV show, and he's done a raft of other stuff as well.
Oh, it's Yahya Abdul Mateen
Yes,
II.
I
Yeah,
always feel bad because I always remember bits of his name, and I feel really guilty for that because he's great and he deserves to be remembered, and I'm crap with his name.
I
Um,
am going to be honest. I had to look up Wikipedia because I didn't want to offend folks. So don't worry.
but they cast him as Morpheus. They cast Jessica Hennick
Yep,
as Bugs, the leader of the current crew of
yep.
Dropper, shall we say. She's an actress I will always be there for because I've loved her in almost everything she's been in, big or
She
small.
she seems to be one of those actresses that has the worst luck at picking projects. I don't know why. She always seems to she has the option to pick one thing and not the other, and then the other turns out well, and then what
Well,
she does.
she always picks the stuff that she wants to do,
Yes, that's true.
which I can't not respect that. And anytime something's not been successful, it's never really been a fault of her own
Mm,
involvement. She's always, I mean, she's in Iron Fist as Colleen Wing,
really
the
good
Marvel
in that,
TV
actually.
show. She's
Really,
great
really
at
good.
that, and people are hoping that now they're bringing a lot of the characters from those shows into Daredevil Born Again, that she will be coming back as well, because where she was left at the end of that show cries
Yeah.
out for her to be a bigger part of
I don't
things.
want to get too off topic, but I know she was asked back for, I think, one of the Doctor Strange, and she passed on it. And so it's one of those things. It's like maybe she'll come back, but with the state of, and the funny thing is, actually, it's not too off topic, because although we're talking about Marvel, we're talking about the growing pains of Marvel, and the
Yeah.
fact was, this Matrix, because people wanted so much from it. And let's face it, they wanted the sequels. I mean, the hype for it was insane. They shot
Oh
two
God,
and
yeah.
three back to back. And in fact, I think the shooting was so stressful that it damaged the relationship between Bill Pope and the Wachowskis. And so Pope has never worked for them again.
Hmm.
And even he said that he'd only go back if there was a discussion on who was involved and what was going on. So clearly there was something quite serious there. And this film as well wasn't free from its controversies, you know. For instance,
Yeah.
you've got Marcus Chong, who's playing Tank here, who is the survivor of this crew. Now, he was offered a very small amount of money comparatively for Hollywood as well to come back. He
Hmm.
also said he got no residuals from the first film, so he was shut out of that. And so he took them to court. And then they amped it up because they said, oh, you've threatened us, and there were lawsuits going this way and that. And he ended up settling out of court. And when people settle out of court, it's usually the case that the studio goes, that will give you this much money to shut up.
Hmm.
But funnily enough, after all of that, then Lawrence Fishburne had a kind of similar freezing out when they went to in a different direction for the Matrix 4. And he was left utterly befuddled as to why nobody chose to cast him.
I think that was down to partly, I think, because of what they wanted Morpheus to do in that film, because he
A
is,
different vision, yeah.
but also there's a physicality that Fishburne, it's like 25 years later, he wouldn't have been able to do the stuff that.
Mm. Yeah, that's true.
But they had a way to explain it because of Morpheus dying in the online video game. If anyone's not aware, the Matrix had an online video game for about 5 years. Matrix Online
Yeah.
span out of the movies and actually informs
Where people end up.
yeah, it
Poor old
exists.
Morpheus dies in an alley.
But it was a big piece of content for the game.
Yeah.
So it's kind of refreshing that they consider, when they were doing the script for Resurrections, they considered all of that. They took it;
Mm.
it was all in play.
Yeah.
So, however, it played out in the end, and I do appreciate the poor female Fishburne's side of things, because that must have been gutting, frankly, because he does pour his heart and soul into Morpheus.
Well,
He's
he would understand anyway. I mean,
mm,
he was irked by it, and he has said some things on camera about, you know, just
mm,
the certainly being an atmosphere, and he was never quite sure what was going on. But of course, the irony was that he was still working with Keanu on the John Wick
yeah,
films.
yeah, yeah.
So they go from one project to the other, and suddenly he's not there. But then they turn up for the next John Wick film and go, so anyone said anything about me?
Man, that must have been weird.
Well, no, because I get the fact anyway.
Yeah.
There were lots of stories about Keanu and his reaction to this film. So, for instance, I think he out of his pocket he paid the stunt team like a bonus on this film, and
I
this
think
is
I think he actually.
this is where it started to, like, the good Keanu memes started to come up.
Yeah, I think it was to the extent he signed away part of his.
Oh,
I'm
what,
trying to
some of
think.
the residuals or something?
Yeah, he that was where the bonus came from for the
Nice.
stunt team because he knew they hadn't been paid to match, so he wanted to compensate them.
Good. That's
So
good to know.
it's kind of bonkers. But this was also getting to the period where he had the worst luck in his personal life imaginable.
Yes, yeah, he had some really. Yeah, this is the thing though. He's always, there's public perception and private perception,
Mm.
public life and private life, and he's had a rotten time with elements of his personal life. I think it's one of the things that people feel so happy for him now is that his personal life seems to be going pretty good.
Yeah.
Though what it does surprise me is I think John Wick, the original John Wick was done at a time when Keanu was just young enough to still get away with it.
Mm.
But then he's done, films over a decade since then in John Wick. And by the time of the last one, he's getting on.
Yeah,
He's
and
in
the
his
fact
60s now.
and the Wick films are all supposed to take place over the course of like a f-
A week.
but the first three are like, well, the first two are a week. Film three is maybe a month or two after that, and then film
Yeah.
four, God knows, and then you have to try and work out where the ballerina fits into that as well, because I can't work
Ye-
out if that's supposed to be after those films, so John's still alive, or if it's during them. I know there's a piece of ballerina that takes place during
Yeah.
the second film, but the rest of the film is like, well, when does this? Ah.
It's when you see him in real life as well, and he's got a brilliant white beard, and you think at some point he will stop. He'll just stop dyeing the hair, and you'll just
Yeah.
see him in all his white haired glory, and that's it. He'll be cast as God for the rest of time.
Well, it's like when they did the third Bill and Ted, you did that clean shaven, and
Oh, that looks so odd.
he looks noticeably. Well, he looks his age.
Yeah.
Good for his age, but he looks his age. And then he grows the beard back, and that's kind of what we're used to seeing. Because as someone with a big fluffy beard of his own, I can appreciate how that does a lot of work to disguise things.
Well, also as well, this was so Keanu he'd pivoted to action. So, 1994, I want to say,
Speed
he
had been
did
the big
Speed,
one.
yeah. And he had he'd done stuff that wasn't a success, like Chain Reaction, but a lot of it was still action based. There was a bit of drama in there, but he was known for action and comedy. He was one half of Bill and Ted, let's face it. But this film sort of put him in a different track for a while, and it's probably been I'd say the last 5-10 years, where he started to lean back more into the comedy side and
Yeah.
clearly enjoyed it. Even if stuff isn't like hugely successful, he just enjoys it. And again, he's one of those people, he's like Brendan Fraser. People are happy for him if he is happy in life.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I'm amazed we haven't had a film yet that has him and Fraser together, because that would just be delightful.
I don't know. I think they would cancel each other out. I think there'd be too much joy on the screen. You just say, look, stop acting, guys, and just hug. Quick note to editor Adam. Again, sorry, I'm going to mention something, but at the end of the lobby scene, which obviously was meticulously planned out, storyboarded to hell, etc., etc., at the end of it, you see Keanu make a kick. It was actually one of the few kicks he could make. He damaged himself. He had spinal fusion surgery at the beginning of the film, so he was recovering from that. So he couldn't really do too many kicks during the film. It would be some of the only shots, especially during the fight with Morpheus, where if there was somebody kicking Morpheus, it might not be him. And so when he did do any kicks, it was usually supported by the wire team, because that way it was actually easier for him to do it. So that was why he would do it. And they played around a lot as well with the build up and the shooting schedule for this film. So obviously they shot everything they needed to, everything. And then right at the end, Keanu went on the crash diet. They shot other bits and other pickups, and then they shot his awakening in the pod as the very last thing when he'd slimmed down. And there were little bits like that for all of the actors. They tried to get the most out of them. But even then, this film took a hell of a toll on people. It was a hefty workload.
Yeah,
So it wasn't easy. So even coming back and doing two more films, they've all said it did take a lot out of them.
yeah, because I mean, it's not like Rings where
Yeah,
that's a massive cast where the load can be spread quite heavily.
that's true, actually. Very point. Yeah.
This is a much tighter bunch of actors. You've basically got three leads,
Three mains. Yeah.
four if you count Smith.
Yep.
That's a lot to be putting on. And even though they do introduce some additional actors in number 2 and 3, they are still very much supporting characters. They're not handling the same level of work as the core cast are doing. So fair play to them for the amount that they did, because
Yeah.
2 sequels back to back, that's not
That's
common
nuts. It's not. It
anywhere.
was. It was one of the. I mean, it wasn't unique. I think. I seem to remember actually it being a big deal when Back to the Future 2 and 3 were shot back to back.
Yeah.
So there were films, and increasingly it was the case that they were doing it. But I think the hype around this film as well, there was so much. And so people just wouldn't stop going on about the fact that 2 was coming. And again, everyone thought that 2 would be, the most amazing thing they'd ever seen. So it was really difficult for the filmmakers to build up to it. I will say as well, as we're nattering away, so we're having the one of the rooftop scenes. So where Neo does his first little bit of bullet time in a meaningful way. That was one of the things that was spammed on all of the TV spots, and yet they used what looked like a very early render of the scene, so the bullet time looked monumentally crap. And in fact, it was just like the Warner Brothers logo that looked really bad in all those TV spots. I don't know what they used. It almost looked like an unfinished render from the T2, the Metal Man kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, there's so many really clean, well formatted, well focused shots in here. Like the framing is really good, and you can tell, as you said, Dee, as well. Like storyboard artists, comic artists have nailed this thing. They've told the directors exactly the best way to approach a given scene. Working with them, and then when it comes to shoot, they're just replicating that. It's
Yeah.
not rocket science. And it has, sorry to, again, small ramble, but when I was at film school, and again, at film school whilst this came out, but I remember working with directors, and I was a cameraman at this point. And I remember getting into trouble once for suggesting ideas to a director. She was like, "Well, you really shouldn't suggest visual shots or framings because that's not what a cameraman does." To which I was like, yeah, that's kind of the whole thing of what we do. But also the fact that the director I ended up doing most of my work with could not draw storyboards for Toffee. They were like abstract pieces. Like he literally couldn't even do stickmen. It was incredible. So I had to sort of go over afterwards and draw out stuff like this. And it's amazing because if you have any good, even basic idea of like drawing and a little bit of, you can imagine a good framing for something, you would come up with stuff like this. And it's not because you're an expert or you're classically trained or you're some sort of visionary. It's because you just know what makes a good shot. And it's
Yeah.
amazing just how many shots in this film are just simply good shots. I mean, my goodness, if I'm thinking that, seeing this now, and the first time I saw it was on, let's face it, on a DVD, on a computer that was probably far less powered than what I've got now. So it wouldn't have been a great experience. I can't imagine what it was like for you seeing this in the cinema. It must have been crazy.
It was mad, man.
Yeah.
The impact of, because it was everything, just the sound was. I hadn't really seen anything like it up to this point. Not in that way.
Yeah.
On the big screen with big Hollywood, at least one big Hollywood name, two if you count Fishburne as well, because he and Reeves were
Yeah.
at that point of their careers. But it was such a crazy thing to see, and I say it. I mean, I was chomping at the bit to have the video so I could rewatch it.
Yeah.
A lot of, I mean, like I say, I went and saw it with a friend of mine from college. We drove up after classes finished for the day, down the motorway to the nearest cinema to watch it. But it took a little time for more people to see it in our group, if that makes sense.
Okay. Well,
People
people were
did,
still a little bit reticent at first.
yeah, but seriously, after that first weekend, when word of mouth and people had actually seen it and word was
Yeah.
getting out,
It was nuts.
then yeah,
Yeah. It did strike me at the time. People got so incredibly excited, and I always remember this irony that I missed it because of the real life, so to speak. And
yeah.
then I never really followed up on it because I was too busy making films. And I never really, especially living on the road, I didn't have the technology, especially like laptops. And that was way out my league at that time. Also, I don't think DVD players were really a thing in laptops at the time. I think you could get maybe a floppy disk. So maybe I could have seen the credits on a computer.
I mean, I think I had a laptop with a CD-ROM in 2000,
Oh,
but
wow, that's cool.
I mean, for DVD, I had a DVD player in 2001 as a
Mm,
birthday present, but then the PS2 dropped, and that just changed the game for everyone.
yeah. Well, actually,
So,
let's talk a bit about the DVD because
hmm,
The Matrix became the poster film for sorry, poster child. I want to say because I don't want to
yeah,
like spam the pun too much, but it did
no, it
became like
it
the
was,
DVD, didn't it, for
but
the
yeah,
DVD age?
it was one of those films where the team, when they were doing the DVD, they made full use of the medium.
Mm.
So there were Easter eggs where you had to do there were
Whole
hidden
certain bits with your controllers, yeah,
there were hidden menus where if you move beyond a certain point with the controller, you could find more content. There was a
yeah,
whole follow the white rabbit thing.
yeah, yeah. I remember that. Yeah,
Um, and of course, there were different. There was a single disc. Initially, it was 2 disc, and then there was a single disc edition. So there was actually different content depend on different versions.
mm.
It was honestly kind of interesting how. I mean, it was one. I'm trying to think what the others. So there's the Matrix, Predators, 2 disc release was one of those. I mean, honestly, the
Oh,
first
for a
yeah,
while, like Easter eggs were such a big deal. I
I
mean,
mean,
it
the
was
first
like
five
movie
years of
commentaries.
the first 5 years of the medium was just.
Fun.
I mean, how Lord of the Rings. I think the extended cut of Fellowship, the discs for that. There's at least one hidden menu,
Mm.
and I know they got in trouble because on one release of it they had the the MTV Movie Awards acceptance speech by Gollum,
Yes.
which is incredibly foul mouthed, where he just berates Andy Serkis,
Yep.
and they had to change the rating of
Oh
the whole
yeah.
release because of it.
My God.
It it, it
It
was
was
gen-
it was a fun time for Medium, and
it
it did.
was.
I think people as well. For a lot of people, their first DVD player was bought because they bought the Matrix DVD. Like it was the best selling. I know it was the best selling disc in the US and in the UK for a period of time.
It's one of the films. It was an event because
Yeah.
it it's it's a weird thing because it wasn't one of those films that came out on DVD at the same time as the VHS release. The DVD
Mm.
didn't release till about 2003, I want to say.
Yeah.
I could be wrong on that point. I'm willing to be corrected. But much like with Star Wars, these they took the approach with DVD that it was going to be an event, so they put their all into it. And you saw that
Mm.
with a lot of the films that were So Blade Runner, great example, had so many DVD releases for different.
Yeah.
So you had different cuts: the original
Yep.
cut, the director's, the final cut, the ultimate cut, different commentaries, documentaries on there. All this material that they just wanted to put out there, and some of them even there are discs where you can find stuff you can't even access on the for your player. You can only access it on a computer.
Mm.
So they would put screenplays and makings and storyboards. All that stuff would be on quite a few films as a feature that was something that people would buy it for, because it was intended to be the definitive edition of. They wanted it to be desirable for people.
Mm.
It's one reason. I mean, I do like Blu-ray because it does different things. The
Yeah.
difference in the menus is quite striking, but I do quite miss that period where DVD was kind of, you would get the stuff that was coming out as stuff released naturally at cinemas and then at home.
Yeah.
But you'd also have the films that people wanted on that format, the classics, however old. I mean, I own Casablanca, Key Largo, Bullet, a whole bunch of classic movies on DVD, just because it was such a good format to have them in.
Yeah.
And whilst we're
Okay.
talking this, we're watching Hugo and Keanu just batter
Well,
the hells out of
I
each other.
I was half wondering if you were going to go on for the next 20 minutes. I genuinely thought, that could be a good thing.
I could espouse about my love of physical medium ad nauseum, frankly, but that'd be a bit rude, I sense.
So, one of the facts that I think most people know is that the director of John Wick, Chad Stahelski. So he did a lot of stunt doubling in this film, and his direct involvement in the stunts actually ended with the moment where Keanu jumps up and pummels Smith into the ceiling. Because when Chad landed, after doing that stunt, I think he took out his shoulder, his knee, and I think his arm. Like he was on crutches for the rest. Yeah. So a lot of these guys, they took a pummeling. But I have to give credit as well. I know, amazing. Now I'm going to talk about the film. But they do have this lovely way of amping up tension at the end. Because even though Neo is learning all these tricks and he is empowered, let's face it, he's really powerful by this point. They still have a way to take him down. And I have to admit, as somebody who, I don't know, you get used to seeing the sort of hero's journey in a lot of films a lot of times. And I do like the way that they've kept this fresh. And they even add in like these little, jumps towards the end where you think he's made it and then he hasn't. And then the crew are under the cosh, even though the hero's having his great moment. The crew are about to die. And it's wonderful that they just built up these dual climaxes so that you're never quite safe until everything is over.
Yeah. It's I do quite like how they give him this additional timer on the end of things. So it's not just that he has to get out of there. He's on a timer now. They've told him he has 5 minutes.
Yeah. And of course he's now in a world where everyone is a potential enemy, which is lovely because you've got this nice disorientating feel. It kind of feels a little bit as well like the real nightmare version of the Matrix.
Yes.
Where you just have no privacy left. Everything is done. And the fact that when most people watch this film as well, they won't even realize that Smith recognizes the hotel that they're in. He recognizes that they were here before.
Yeah.
Which is why he then corners him. But at the time, most people just didn't get it. Really, really nicely done. I love the lighting in these hallways, by the way. It's like the longest sequence of blandly written places you've ever seen.
It really, and you know what? I also quite enjoy how the agents just keep appearing in random places.
Yeah, in random people's bodies as well.
In a way, they could easily have just gone with, let's just have lots of agents, but they keep to just 3. And I know some of that will be a budgetary thing. They only cast 3 actors as the agents.
Mm.
But you have Weaving and Smith, but the other 2 guys, they do a damn good job as these
Yeah.
quite emotionless.
Now, did these guys come back for the sequels?
I'm trying to remember because I know one of the actors who plays an agent also played Stark on Farscape,
Oh, right. Oh, wow. Okay.
and I think he comes back for at least the second one.
Lovely.
I don't remember if the other guy does,
Right.
but then they were making full use of as many Smiths as we can for.
Yeah, I was gonna say that was where the Smith Neo thing became, I think to some fans as well, it became the be all and end all. Whereas it clearly wasn't to the Wachowskis, and the fact as well that they sidestepped, and let's face it as well, Smith wasn't back for the fourth one. They
No,
reimagined
well,
him. They played
yeah,
around with that. So
they did. I mean, I think I do find Smith interesting as because he makes good points. I mean,
oh yeah,
he's a sentient being in his own right, and he's basically stuck watching batteries effectively.
yeah.
He has no
He's
existence
he's a
outside that.
zookeeper,
Yeah,
and he hates it.
it's so in a way it just shows off how the machines really have their own system wants to rebel against them.
Hmm.
It's not just for humans; their own programs are not being served properly.
Which leaves him. I mean, he develops into this really odd character. I have to admit, I've not studied the other films
Mm.
too much. I do remember seeing them both, and when I'd argue I think I've seen the fourth film more than I have the third, but it does seem that Smith is left in a very odd place after all of this. He's arguably too human to continue
Yeah,
being a robot, but I suppose he just wants to find his own place.
yeah. I mean, it's why I actually found what they did with him in the fourth one kind of interesting. But they put him and Neo both back in, but
Yeah.
they gave them both basically. Well, they gave Neo back his old life pretty much, but
Mm.
they put Anderson in there as well, not as Smith in there
Yeah.
as part of his life, and they weren't antagonistic. They were co-workers.
Mm.
It's implied that they're friends in this world.
Yeah.
So there's an interesting point that, well, maybe Smith and Neo, they might be allies that they both kind of need.
Yeah.
And if you think in those terms, at the end of Resurrection, you have Neo and Trinity as with their combined abilities. Smith is kind of in the wind.
Yeah, he's a free
So
agent, literally.
yeah, so it makes him an interesting rogue element to have in play because he could go either way. And I could see his characterization. It is his hatred is very understandable.
Yeah.
But it's built off of being forced to do something.
Mm.
Whereas, well, because actually, when you think about it, he doesn't really have a lot of choice even in the sequels. He's still
No.
working almost to his programming, just taken to extremes.
Hmm.
So there's an interesting question of, well, what if Smith was given? What would Smith do if given a choice? Would he still be an antagonist?
Yeah,
Could he?
I do wonder as well. I thought a bold way to go would be for Smith to be the hero of the second trilogy.
That could be interesting, yeah.
By the
'Cause,
way,
I mean,
fans, people watching this in the cinema must have gone absolutely batshit at this point.
it was a real hero pump the fist moment.
I was going to say, was this a noisy cinema? Because you were going probably at the height of its initial hype. It
I mean,
must have been something.
we went on the Friday, uh, mid-afternoon, if I remember.
Yeah.
It was a busy screen. I remember that because people were even at this point, because this was opening weekend, people were
Oh, so
first,
maybe just before the full impact hit.
yeah. So people were still, for people who were there, were the ones who were really interested, getting
Yep.
in as early as they could.
Yep.
I don't remember. I think there was a bit of a collective cheer when Neo sees the code.
Mm.
But honestly, for most of it, I think we were all kind of a bit stunned because this was such a.
Yeah. Because it's so much more than you expect.
Mm,
I don't, honestly, I wouldn't be surprised. It was such an intense experience. Even seeing it now, seeing people react to this as well on YouTube. And let's face it, that's the life that a lot of these films now have, is that you listen to people going, oh my God, on a YouTube video. And they don't really get to discuss it much. They just get to yell that initial reaction,
yeah,
which is a shame because with a film like this, you'd actually like them to talk a little bit more afterwards about what the film actually meant to them and not just go, hey, like, share, and subscribe. Bye bye.
yeah,
And the fact that this ends on quite a tender note as well, it's not, there's action, yes, there's your heroic cheer, but there's also just a little bit of calm down. And then it ends on a very odd note for a film like this
mm,
because it almost downplays it, and you're not quite sure why you're watching the shot from above of Neo until right at the end.
yeah.
But
It it's as scenes go.
mm.
It's a pretty good one,
Did
and it.
you expect there to be a sequel? And would you have preferred that there wasn't?
You know, I'm always of two minds of that because on the one hand, The Matrix as a singular film, it does stand on its own merits quite well.
Mm.
It doesn't need anything else. As much as I've spent a good chunk of this recording kind of espousing how much I've enjoyed the additional content, it always did. When people talk of The Matrix, they do tend to have the most fond memories of this film more than any other, and that's perfectly understandable because it was such just a shock to the system.
Yeah.
But I'm talking because there was the sequels were an experience of their own right because people really did get hyped for them.
Mm.
Too hyped, potentially, but it was just so damn fun to talk to people whilst talk to my friends as it was coming together and and then to go and see them
Yeah.
and talk about them afterwards because we chatted for hours about these movies.
Mm.
We we watched this, we watched the animations, we played Enter the Matrix quite a bit, in fairness, more than we probably should have done. But it was all. I don't think the Matrix would potentially still be the cultural presence it is without the sequels
Yeah.
and the rest of the material,
Yeah.
because the Matrix. It is, in my opinion, a great movie.
Mhm.
The rest of the material makes it a great setting.
Yeah, agree, totally.
And that setting is a crucial part because it's a world that there's a lot of space if people want to play in the Matrix, the world that the Wachowskis devised, I should say, or if they want to use it as inspiration for their own stories. It's a great blueprint, not to copy, but to just use as an example of how you do this. You know,
Yeah. Right. Well, I think on that note, I don't know if there's much more to say. I think you summed it up perfectly. The one thing I will add to this is that Barry M. Osborne was an executive
yeah.
producer on this.
I just saw it and I'd forgotten that, but the man had his fingers in a lot of really good pies.
Because if you don't know, folks, he was also a producer on the Lord of the Rings trilogy. So he was another person who was incredibly busy at the time. So
Oh yes.
there we go. So anyway, summing up, oh God, I get to ask Dee the impossible question. So sum up the Matrix for me.
It, it's an adrenaline shot to the system that
Yep.
whatever you think it is, it probably isn't, but it can bend to what you would like it to be.
Cool.
And that is probably a vehicle of some of the other mumbo jumbo I've seen people write about the Matrix over the years.
Well, that's the thing. I think we've done okay here because we've not actually. Thank you for your disappearing off into the Matrix for a bit. That was almost the perfect ending. But you guys at home, I'll hopefully hear from you soon. You guys take care and all the best.
Absolutely.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.